So the best flight options are going to be available through any site that does a consolidated search across all the airlines. So you could always go to delta.com or American Airlines, but I'd really suggest using Google Flights. So if you go to google.com/flights, Google has put together a search engine that is like what you'd get from Kayak or Orbitz or Travelocity, but it's really fast, it's really accurate, and gives you a whole lot of search options. So if you're looking to go away for Memorial Day, but maybe you have flexibility and you could leave a day earlier, a day later, the Google Flights option will let you see the prices without having to do multiple searches. It'll give you the options of saying, well, if you leave on Friday, it's this much. If you leave on Thursday, you could save $50 or $60. So it's a good way to see prices without having to do multiple searches all at once, and it gives it to you in the ability where you can just see it on a calendar, click, and go straight to booking. You can sort by price, you can sort by flight time, you can sort by the number of stops, you can sort by a specific airline, and what it actually does is it will suggest what it thinks are the best cost versus flight time options. Right, so if there's a flight option that is a total of 10 hours of travel and is $300, but it finds something that's only 4 hours of travel and is $310, it'll suggest the one that's $10 more because it's going to be a much better travel experience, but it'll still give you both options. Yeah, the more you put into it, the more you will save, right? It's like anything, but the thing is, right, being based in Savannah, it's expensive to fly out of here, and JetBlue has really helped flights to New York and Boston. You'll notice the prices are relatively competitive, and they've brought the prices down on Delta and the other airlines as well. So it's fantastic for all of us. I call it the JetBlue effect. You know, before you may have heard of the Southwest effect. When Southwest comes into a city, prices for everything come down. It's because they offer things at a more competitive price, and the other airlines need to compete. So something to consider is because JetBlue flies to New York or JetBlue flies to Boston, look to try to originate that international flight out of New York or out of Boston. Because a lot of times you'll find international airlines that'll have fare sales originating in those cities. So for example, if you wanted to fly WOW Air or you wanted to fly Iceland Air, and you could get a great deal out of Boston, but they don't fly to Savannah. So what you could do is you could book a separate ticket from Savannah up to Boston or Savannah up to New York, and I've seen tickets as low as $120 round trip, and having family in New York and Boston, that's fantastic. But then piece together that other fare, which might be $400 or $500. So yeah, you're paying for two tickets, but it's still a lot less than paying $1,000 or $1,200 for that same ticket that you would pay if you booked it with United or Delta out of Savannah.